Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let Wildman Bill introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
I am Bill McUisdean, and I am the writer of the ever so enjoyable Zorne Pulp series over on Substack.
All right. And before we get started and we dive off the deep end with your cereal story, not the cereal you eat, people, just he likes to put out a lot of them, a little bit at a time. We do have to ask you the religion question. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
You know, considering them long and hard, I have to say Doctor Who. You didn't even have the best option there.
Well, you weren't British, so I didn't think we needed to include it.
But if you put a gun to my head and tell me that I have to be patriotic and American, I would absolutely say Star Trek.
Fair. Did you like the new Doctor Who? The new Doctor?
So I stopped watching with Capaldi. Capaldi was my exit point. Part of that was because I could see the writing. A, I could see the writing on the wall with Capaldi's run, and B, there was nothing good anyone who was a long-term fan of Doctor Who was saying about Whittaker, and absolutely still nothing good anyone has said about Gatwa's runs. And then there were also a couple, one in particular, a long video essay that really broke down a lot of issues that this lifelong fan noticed with the run. It just, for everything I heard, it just seemed like they lost the point after Capaldi. So I was like, you know what? It's a good exit. Nice little cap ender, his final episode.
You had a good run.
Maybe not the best stories, but like with pretty much every other Doctor, you don't. Big reason why you're watching it is to see the actor playing the Doctor, because they had really good actors playing that character for so long.
Okay. And because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
So going through them one by one, Game of Thrones, I never even finished the final season. Wheel of Time, I have never read. I know I'm going to probably get some hate for that. So I'm going to have to go with Chronicles of Narnia.
So now, The Wheel of Time, you said you haven't read it. Did you watch any of the movie series?
Nope.
Game of Thrones, you said you haven't watched the last season. Have you read the books?
No, I refuse to read the books until George finishes them.
That's valid.
I will not go into an unfinished series that is unfinished because the author doesn't care enough about his audience to actually put in the work to finish it. And I can say right now, I will not subscribe to any such flaws of character.
Yeah, all right. And because you have answered the favorite dinosaur question, we're going to mix it up a little bit. And so, what is your favorite zoo animal?
I don't think I've been in a zoo since I was a kid.
Okay, what's your favorite animal that might be in a zoo?
Oh. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because when you get down to it, zoology can be pretty interesting overall. But end of the day, I'll just say your standard wolf. Wolves are cool.
If you were going to be a shifter of some sort, what kind of shifter, what kind of were person would you be?
That's actually a question I have not considered before.
I like werewolves because I'm a wolf person too.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's always werewolves.
Yeah, being a bear could be kind of cool. You just sleep all winter, nobody bothers you. There is some allure there as a dad. Just leave me alone. Let me sleep.
It wouldn't quite vibe with me though, because the I'm not a big fan of sleep, surprisingly enough. If I could live my life without sleep, I absolutely would. So the idea of hibernating for half the year and sleeping it away just doesn't appeal to me. And I don't want to say wolf because, again, it's always wolves. It's always the werewolf.
You could be a werepoodle then.
Actually, no, there you go. Not a werewolf, not a werepoodle, a were-shiba. Because everyone in my family, at least my dad, loves Shiba Inus.
Okay.
He's got 2 of them.
And we'll just ignore the concept of conservation of mass because, it's magic, so who cares?
Yeah, there you go. Physics, what's that?
We're talking magic. We can throw physics out the window. All right. And because we're civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, we are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
So I usually do neither. If I'm in the need for some kind of beverage to give me a good kick in the rear, I use these caffeine-flavored water packets. Got a nice selection. Cherry, watermelon, dragon fruit. It's delicious. I never really vibed with coffee and tea. I have a kind of tea that I like to get, but I only get it because it really helps soothe the throat whenever I'm sick. And that's really more of a function thing than I enjoy the taste.
That's valid. So obviously you're here because we're going to talk about the serial story that you wrote, or are writing actually.
Yeah.
How did you get into speculative fiction writ large? How did you discover your love for all things nerdy?
I lay that blame squarely and solidly on my brother and my dad. Because both of them were big on movies. My brother was also big into reading, although he and I read different things. I tend to go to more... You can't really see clearly my titles, but there's a lot of science fiction and fantasy on those shelves. Whereas my brother was more interested in thrillers and the such. Honestly, I think it was more just the influence growing up with things like Star Wars, the Mortal Kombat movie from the 90s, Big Trouble in Little China, like these movies that had science fiction or fantasy elements. We even had a couple of the old Star Trek movies at my house when I was a kid, and I watched those as well. I didn't realize just how great Star Trek was until much later. But I would say, going all the way back, it was just much like Thanos, inevitable.
Okay. Did you grow up reading, or was it mostly on the screen in the beginning?
So, there was quite a bit of reading. There was quite a bit of reading. I remember being fond of the Guardians of Ga'Hoole books. I was really, really excited when Snyder came out with his movie based off those. I read that. I remember reading... I don't think I ever finished it, but I remember reading the first book of the Temeraire series. I read Lord of the Rings in high school. So yeah, there's some reading there, but there was also some personal stuff that ended up happening where I ended up giving up on the... I don't want to say give up on the reading. It was more like trading the reading for a bad habit that continued for almost 2 decades, only to start recently actually really trying to get back into reading. Mainly because, A, reading is cool, and anyone who says otherwise is a lame, nerdy jock. And just because I do believe anyone who writes should have that influence of just sitting down and read. And not just read, what you're interested in, but also try to expand those horizons into genres that you may not typically be interested in, because I believe you can learn important skills and ways for how to do things in any story by broadening those horizons.
Okay, so how, like, when you say read outside of your genre, what are we talking about? What kind of stories are you reading? Are you reading nonfiction too?
So I've got nonfiction. So like I said, I'm more into fantasy and science fiction, but I also have some stuff here. I've read some stuff that doesn't necessarily fall into fantasy or science fiction, but just regular fiction. I've read some Louis L'Amour, and I've read Ayn Rand's We the Living. So just, if you're someone who's going to write thrillers, if your favorite genre is a thriller, I would say if you want to write, read a romance book as well. Read a science fiction book as well. Read things that fall outside of that purview. So for me, science fiction and fantasy. I also have books on my to-read list and books that I have read that are just regular fiction. I do believe there's a romance there that I was wanting to read. Just can't remember what the title of it was. And then, of course, reading nonfiction as well helps, because then you learn about some stuff that you may not have known, and that stuff can be incorporated as well into world building or I had another thing. I lost it. This always happens when I talk.
So you see value in being widely read.
Yeah. To quote Chris Gore over at he, I think, puts it the best. A person should have a diverse media diet. And that is an opinion that I fully support, fully back. And as I'm trying to get back into reading and overall just getting myself back on track in terms of life in general, that's something that I'm actively trying to put into practice myself, is just having that wide diet of different things that I am willing to look at.
Okay. Is there any specific nonfiction that you enjoy reading the most?
Honestly, and I will tell you right now, this probably also played an influence on why I decided to go with Zorne and the way that it is. Space, physics, and even mathematics, just because I find all of those concepts interesting. I can't remember who said it. Someone once said, science is the language with which God wrote the universe, and mathematics is the alphabet. And I don't know how to explain it other than I love looking into math and science simply because it's getting that better understanding of the universe and how it works, not just, things that humans have made like cars or computers or anything like that, but just everything, how the stars work, how mathematical formulas can be used to better understand reality itself. It's just very, very interesting in my opinion. And that's always been my favorite sort of nonfiction stuff to look at, is just all of that.
Okay. When you're watching or reading science fiction, because that's, you said, what you prefer right now, what is it that draws you? What kind of story is what engages you?
So it kind of depends on what I'm looking for. I strive to take anything I read for what it is, anything I watch for what it is, because honestly, I think that's the best approach to have. But what do I find most engaging? It really depends on the mood.
So there's no rhyme or reason for it for you. It's just
Nope, I could go from watching, say, shooting off the top of my head, let's say Rambo 2, some schlocky action movie from the 80s, immediately turn around and watch some high concept Russian science fiction film like, say, Solaris or Stalker, and come away from both of those viewing experiences like, yeah, that was worth my time. That was fun. I had a good time.
Okay. Is there anything that's out right now that you're really enjoying when it comes to speculative fiction? I know Trek's got some new stuff. People were digging the Orville for a while. There's new stuff that they're hyping up, although until it's out and I can actually watch it, I don't believe any hype anymore because I've been lied to too many times.
Yeah, I'm not spending any time on any of the new Trek stuff. After I actually sat down and watched the original series, I realized almost immediately that Abrams and everyone after him have sort of lost the plot in what makes Star Trek Star Trek. So I haven't really engaged with anything recent with Star Trek in terms of things that I am interested in terms of speculative fiction. I would actually say the only two big examples of ongoing shows I can think of are both web series that have been coming out on YouTube. The Amazing Digital Circus and Space King. Those are really the only shows that I look forward to watching new episodes for anymore. Everything else I watch is stuff that ended years ago.
Okay. What is it about those two stories that make them speak to you?
Well, both of them fall into sort of that sort of science fiction kind of thing. And The Amazing Digital Circus, for anyone who is unaware of what it is, these people have ended up trapped in a computer simulation run by a computer program that's quite possibly insane. And so it's really interesting because it becomes a sort of character study of all these different characters. And I find that very fascinating and very entertaining to watch.
So you like character-driven stories more than anything?
Oh yeah, character-driven is absolutely amazing. And it's also one of the benefits that Space King has as well. Space King is a parody of Warhammer 40K, and in that series you're following this squad of 4 soldiers, and just like the characters in The Amazing Digital Circus, each member of this squad has a very unique and distinctive personality, and they are very, like, both shows, the people writing them are doing amazing and phenomenal work just writing their characters and doing that sort of character-driven storytelling. Like, the characters themselves are dictating how the plot moves forward, and the plot is not dictating how the characters are.
Okay. Well, I want to get into the Zorne thing because it was why we brought you here. So we're going to do it a little bit early this time, and I'm going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man today, and then we're going to get started on the books that brought. Well, I guess it's not really a book yet. The serial that brought us here.
The Terran Empire is dead. Long live the Empire. Commander Jared Mertz, the bastard son of the Emperor, and his half-sister, Princess Kelsey, barely speak to one another. To their dismay, their father seizes an opportunity to change that and sends them on a dangerous quest to explore the fallen Empire. Separated from home by an impassable gulf and struggling to redefine their relationship, they find themselves thrust into a vicious war. Unless they work together to stop the Empire's deadly legacy, billions face a horrific fate. Empire of Bones, written by Terry Mixon, now available at Amazon.com.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And so with that out of the way, so let's talk about the story that brought us here, Zorne. As normally when we get to this point, dear listener, we would throw up the cover, but you're doing this right now for free on your Substack, which we'll link to as you write it. And then once you're completely done with it, at some point it will go up for sale on all the sites. So you actually haven't commissioned a cover for it yet. So we don't have one to show. Hopefully by the time this airs, you'll have something if nothing else, just for a thumbnail. But could you give us the elevator pitch for what Zorne is?
I should have expected this question. I'm giving you plenty of dead air. I know.
It's okay. So one of the reasons we picked the commercial we did, because I asked you what was like yours, and you said there was definitely a little bit of elements of horror, but it was a lot of exploration in the unknown. So I'll get you started.
Yeah, and that's really the best way I can think of at the moment is Zorne is an adventure series where we see our main character, Alexander Zorne, travel through space. Just exploring, helping people, being an all-around, well, I want to say good dude. He is a good dude at heart, but where the story's at, he's still sort of learning the ropes of his job.
So what is his job at the beginning?
So ever since he was a young boy, Alexander has wanted to join an organization known as the Galactic Defense Agency.
Okay.
And the whole purpose of this agency is safeguarding the peace, the very tenuous peace of the galaxy. And in the lowest ranking position as a defender, Alexander, along with his senior partner, Valen, is sent out to pretty much patrol the galaxy like a glorified space cop almost. Just seeing what's out there. If someone needs help, it is their responsibility to go help. If they find something mysterious or enigmatic, it is their job to investigate and find out, is this an issue? Is this going to be a problem in the future? Is it just some weird science thing that is deserving of further study? What's going on? And that's where Alexander is. He's learning the ropes, learning how to be a defender.
So it's almost like Lewis and Clark in space.
Yeah. That is not I never thought of that. But now that you brought it up, that's not going to leave my head. Lewis and Clark in space. There you go. That's the elevator pitch for the first set of stories. The series is going to be divided into cycles. Right now, I'm still in the first cycle, the Defender cycle. And yeah, the Defender cycle can pretty much, I guess, be summed up as Lewis and Clark in space.
So for people, like, obviously you're not published yet, so it's just on your Substack, which is the wild, wild west of the internet right now. Substack is. Mm-hmm. So for people that are curious, hey, is this okay for my kids? How would you rank this if we're going to use, I don't know, elevator? If we're going to use like a movie theater rating, how would you rate this story so they know what's appropriate and what's not for?
So I would say I'm going for a solid PG or PG-13. Like I'm trying to avoid going into full hard R.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm not going so far as to. I'm trying to think of how to word this. I think the example of like David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who from like the 2000s would be a nice barometer.
Okay. So what can you tell us about the main character? I mean, obviously we know what his job is, but what can you tell us about him as a person?
Yeah, so he comes from a very famous family. So he's his grandfather is a very famous war hero, very prominent. His father was also, granted, a bit more of a local war hero, but still a very famous war hero as well. And so Zorne, at the start, because I start the series with a bit of a flashback. First thing I can tell you about him, he looks up to his dad and his grandfather. They are his heroes. They are his idols. He wants to be just like them. He wants to be a hero, just like them, helping people and seeing, like I said, just seeing what's out there in the cold depths of space. And he's apologies for the delay. The thing I'm doing for the contest has really thrown me off here lately.
No, it's okay.
So
and this is your first time being interviewed about a story you haven't had to think about. Like I will say, when you're writing a story, once you get to the end and you're actually thinking, okay, what am I going to write for the ad copy? It does force you to sort of think about the kind of things you talk about in an interview like this.
Yeah.
So the fact that you've never had to do this, you're kind of, almost pre-debut with this story because it hasn't gone through a professional edit yet. Not to say that it's not relatively clean, because I did skim through it in preparation for this. So you're at a point in your journey where you're just learning those specific skills. And I have been, the interview never aired, but a friend of the show, Jonathan Yanez, and his wife interviewed me about one of my books. And I'd interviewed hundreds of people at that point, and I still froze up on that interview. And the only reason it didn't go out and embarrass the heck out of me, because I still would have aired it, is because it corrupted, and we never got around to refilming it.
Oof.
And then we changed from Zencastr to what we use now. But I can tell you, having been on the other side of the microphone, it is not as easy as just asking the question. So I'm sympathetic. You'll get better.
I do believe you edit these, right?
No. Unless
Fantastic.
there's a reason, I
love
tend
it.
not to. I think people like it more in the raw. It makes it more real.
Yeah.
Unless there's like huge dead air, and I'll just cut the dead air, but I still don't tend to cut the ums and the ahs. But yeah, this gets easier, I promise you. So are there any secondary characters that you really enjoy either, interacting with through Zorne or writing about through their POV?
So I'm not really deviating from Zorne's POV at the moment. I might later. Like, there is a bit of stuff in a future cycle where I do want to get into another person's perspective on something, because that will become important for later in the series. But for right now, I'm mostly coming at it from Zorne's perspective. But I absolutely love writing for Valen. Absolutely, because the inspiration for Valen came from the Doctor and another character. A character from literary pulps, Jules de Grandin. And I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but it was a character created by Seabury Quinn back in the early 20th century. And Jules de Grandin is sort of this eccentric Frenchman. And so when I was developing Valen, I created this sort of eccentric alien to be one of the primary mentors for Zorne during this first cycle of the series. And I just love writing for him because it gives me an excuse to have a little bit of fun with sentence structure and how I'm writing dialogue. Because Valen, so my universe does have universal translators so that people can understand each other. And because I didn't want to go through the hassle of trying to remember like a ton of alien languages and speech patterns and so forth. But Valen is such a nice guy, and he respects humans and the achievement of Tiberius Zorne, Alexander's grandfather, that he went out and he actually learned English himself. Well, not necessarily English, but the human language, I guess I should say, because as far in the future as it takes place, English might not even exist anymore. And so Valen's speech has a heavy accent. Now, I say heavy, it might not be as heavy as other books or other stories or how other writers do it. But if he reads Valen's dialogue, it is very much English, or human is very much not his native tongue. And I just love writing that. I also love having this character who understands that, yeah, there is a procedure to some things. There is a way that we are supposed to do things according to the books. Sometimes we have to throw the book away because the book is wrong. So he's not insubordinate. He just has a level of wisdom about him where he understands, well, yes, this is how we should do it. On the other hand, we have no choice but to do it this other way. And it is better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, especially if lives are at stake. And then there's also the fact that his species, they age at a slower rate than humans. So even though he is 10 years Alexander's senior, he is as youthful as a human in his 20s. So it's sort of that mix of youthful exuberance and wizened experience, which I also kind of enjoy.
So you like mashing up various kind of character concepts?
Honestly, that might be a distinct possibility. I may, as I continue going forward with things, find out that I very much enjoy that.
Okay. Did you do that with any of the secondary characters that you've encountered so far?
So, give me a second to really think here, because each story in the Defender cycle is sort of a different adventure. So there's a lot of, I've introduced quite a few characters already.
It's okay. It gets easier, I promise. So are there...
Is that why I have to take, schizophrenic notes about my own world? Is that part of it being easier?
No, that part doesn't ever get easier. I just meant the interviewing about it. It gets easier.
Gotcha.
So you do a lot of exploration. Is a lot of the setting on the various ships that they're traveling on, or is it set on planets and space stations?
So it depends entirely on the story. Give me a second here. I want to pull up my notes so I'm not getting my stuff incorrect here. And I had to fresh load my computer the other day because my Windows got corrupted. So everything's collapsed and dumb and not open. Okay. So far, most of the stories have taken place on other planets. The ship that they travel in is not a big ship. It's a class of ship that in universe I refer to as a space cruiser because it cruises space, and it's designed for a small crew.
So it's sort of space yacht vibes?
Yeah, pretty much. But that's really just how they get from point A to point B. I haven't delved too much into that shit. I did get a bit technical on how the engines, on the interstellar engines in my world work in the last story that came out prior to this recording, the Star Race fix, mainly because that did kind of come into play with how Zorne and Valen needed to keep someone safe from the threats of a space mob boss. But yeah, the first one, they found a ghost ship, and then after that, they brought it to a space station, and so that one took place on a space station. 2, 3, 4, 5 all take place on planets, and 6, the Star Race fix, takes place on an artificial planet. And then the next one coming up will take place on a Dyson sphere.
Oh, interesting.
And that is really fun, actually. That is really fun, and one of the things that I think I am going to enjoy moving forward is imagining how these things have to work. Because the Dyson sphere, there's a star in the middle. So how is the light hitting everything? Because that's really weird to sort of think about, because here on Earth and on most terrestrial bodies, you're going to be used to shadows because of like the curvature of the planet, how where the light source is compared to the planet. But the Dyson sphere, no, the light source is there, everything around it. And it's just, I was messing with my head in all the right ways when I was first conceptualizing and trying to describe it.
How hard is the science in this story?
How hard is the science?
Like, you know, hard science fiction as a genre, yeah. How technical is it?
It really depends. So I guess the best way to say it is I'm taking ideas that I think are interesting and sort of working them in my own way while trying to maintain consistency in my own world building. Perfect example. This is going to be a couple stories down, but I am absolutely going to break the volcanic rules of Mars. I know I'm going to do it, but I've also developed an in-universe explanation for why it's doing the things that it's doing. That when I actually start writing that one, might actually play into like the larger narrative as well. Now, one thing I've always loved about sort of the cerebral science fiction, like classic Doctor Who and classic Trek, is that the stories, yeah, they weren't so much focused on a lot of the technical aspects, but what they did was they presented you with an idea, which you could chew on. They gave you an interesting concept to consider, and then they just sort of let that concept take its course over the course of the story.
So what concepts do you like to explore?
Anything the dart hits when I throw it at the wall. There's honestly the one idea that has really caught my interest, but this is also more so thinking long term for the series. And when I say long term, I mean I probably won't get to this for another 4 or 5 years, roughly. But time and free will, because as I've been working on the story, there is this sort of through line of destiny, almost like Zorne has this role or destiny he needs to fulfill for the wider galaxy. But looking at that idea and picking it apart from not a religious aspect, but from an astrophysics aspect, is really interesting. Because for anyone unfamiliar, in theoretical astrophysics, and it might just be theoretical physics, I'm not sure, but I'll just say astrophysics, there's this idea that time is happening simultaneously, like all of time, past, present, and future. It is all happening at once, which raises the question, is there actually free will? And I have a story planned out that I want to explore that with, while also exploring, could free will still exist in such a universe or such an existence? But like I said, that's more long term and something that may end up fully coming to fruition, just how the story plays out with Alexander and some things that the audience is going to learn about his grandfather's history. But in terms of some of the other things, the second story, I presented a world that had its entire ecosystem basically ruined by an invasive species. I've got I introduced a nice little piece of technology in the Star Race Fix with these platforms that the aforementioned space mob bosses are using to host racing events on the surfaces of stars.
Okay.
Although I didn't quite delve as much into that as I would have liked. I focused more so on Alexander and Valen protecting this racer and his sister from the threats they were getting. But that is absolutely something I want to revisit later, because that sounds like it could be fun.
Okay.
There's another thing as well, and this is sort of a bit of a Halo influence on my part. But this idea of a species so ancient and yet so advanced that they were able to make achievements that we can only dream of making in terms of the interstellar or galactic stage.
So the Forerunner concept, the precursor species.
Yep.
They did it in Stargate too with the Ancients. The little gray men actually is what they became. It's a fun concept to play with. That's where some of the Atlantis myth comes from. Mm-hmm. The idea of the pre-existing, genius sort of race, if you were. Okay, well, we obviously don't want to give any spoilers, and this is not complete, so it's not long enough that we can dive too deeply in it. Is there anything about this that we didn't cover that you think we need to before we wrap this up?
No, I think that just about covers it. I would only want to reiterate that this, honestly, Alexander's story as a whole could be summed up like this, but especially in the Defender cycle, he is a good man at heart, and he is just trying his best to learn how to be in this well-respected job where he can try to live up to the grandiose name established by his ancestors, by his father and his grandfather. And okay. That, honestly, you talk about concepts, and I know my brain went to the science fiction concepts. That's really the concept that fascinates me the most, especially recently learning my own family history. There's a reason why the surname of my pen surname there is McUisdean, because I learned some stuff about my family history that, gives me sort of pause. And I think most people, and this is something I'd recommend to people as well, learn about your family history if you can. Like if you come from a Scotch-Irish clan like I do the research, because the information is going to exist, because they are big on that stuff. They are big on recording their family history.
So did you guys?
It is humbling to learn your family history, and I think it gives a new perspective.
Did your family come to America after supporting the Bonnie Prince? Is that what happened?
No. Okay. So first of all, I would recommend the book I've been reading. It literally is just McUisdean spelled like that. But no, the McUisdeans came to America pretty early on. The most significant thing that I've read in the book so far on the McUisdeans in America was one of them having a meeting with one of the founding fathers.
Well, Culloden, if they came during the Second Jacobite Uprising, would have been like the 1740s. So they would have been
would it?
here in time. Yeah, some of the people that settled the Appalachia were on the losing side, and so they came here, took their ball, and went home, so to speak. And so, yeah, that's where a lot of the Scotch Irish in America got here from. So, but this isn't the history podcast. I get those letters all the time, and people get mad and tell me I'm boring. So instead, this is a part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. It really does matter. So do your part. You can't leave reviews per se on Substack, but you can leave comments, and that does help. And with that, Bill, how can we find you on the wild interwebs?
Well, first of all, if anyone there reads Zorne and leaves a comment, I have no life. I will read it. I might even interact with it. So, fair warning. In terms of the wild interwebs, really the best way to find me is that username there, Wilder396, with a Y where the I would be. And then McUisdean, you search that name and only two things come up. Me and the book. Not my book, the other book. The history book. But yeah, I'm on X, I'm on Substack, Wilder396.
All right.
I'm occasionally here, I'm occasionally over at the Iron Seas, and I'm just going about.
All right, and you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby's tab on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, people. They will weep tears of joy. Sometimes they'll call it coffee, but it's happiness in a liquid form, people. And if you want some of that happiness, you can go to Coffee Brand Coffee's website. Use the link in the show notes. The discount code is Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. All right, thanks for coming on, Bill. This was fun.
Yep.
I promise it gets easier.
I hope so.
All right, now we're going to hit the end button.